Hello, welcome to SPS's On Conversation today, where our topic is analytics for inventory management. Today, we're going to explore how when sales are volatile, you'll need to keep a closer eye on your inventory using analytics. We're going to hear from retail industry experts from Gills Gear, Real Avid, Therabody, Zebco, and of course, SPS Commerce. My name is Danny Schmitz, and I am a trainer here at SPS, and I will be your host this afternoon. And I am here to make sure that things run smoothly and we get all your questions answered and we wrap up on time. At the end of our session, we have a live Q&A with our whole panel. And so you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's going to be a Q&A spot where if you have any questions at any time, you can go ahead and drop those in there and we'll make sure to answer those at the end of our session today. So without further ado, let's jump in and meet our panel. First, we have Luis de la Mata, who is the Vice President of Sales and Analytics at Gills Gear, who's a provider of fishing clothes and apparel. Hello, Luis.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
Next, we have Brad Handley, the Director of Category Management at Therabody, the maker of the leading massage gun, the Theragun. Thanks for joining us, Brad.
Thank you, good to be here.
Then we have Sean Siegfried, the Director of Supply Chain at Zebco, America's trusted fishing reels and rods. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Danny.
And then we have Dave Steiner, the GM of Real Avid, providing the latest tools for today's marksman. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be here.
And then on the SPS side, we have Jody Powell, who's been at SPS for nearly 8 years as a strategic account executive. Hello, Jody.
Hey guys, looking forward to the call.
Then we have Tyler Pearson, a sales manager on the SPS analytics team. Good to have you here, Tyler.
Good afternoon, happy to be here.
And finally, we have Allison Tribus, a senior retail intelligence manager at SPS who trains and coaches many companies on analytics and will be showing us a live demo later on. Welcome, Allison.
Great to be here.
All right. I'm going to start it off and hand it over to Tyler to kick things off. Tyler, take it away.
Danny, thank you. Hey, everyone. Welcome. So excited to be here and to have Luis, Sean, and Dave on with me to share some of their insights and bestow some of their knowledge upon us. So buckle up. It's going to be a fun ride. Let's take a moment and give them a chance to briefly introduce themselves. Let's start with Luis.
Hi guys, Luis de la Mata. I am, as my CEO calls it, my title is VP of Success at Gills Gear. I've been here for about 1.5 years. I previously was with Hook Performance Fishing and then 7 years with Under Armour. In terms of the Gills LLC, we trade under the brands Gills, Real Life, and FinTech, which allows us to really trade in virtually every channel of distribution. In terms of growth, we're on pace right now to achieve over 2.5x growth year over year from 20 to 21. So great business right now.
Awesome. Good stuff. How about you, Sean?
I'm Sean Siegfried, Director of Supply Chain for Zebco Brands. I've been with Zebco 2 years, but I have 15 years in the fishing tackle industry, anything from forecasting, supply chain, even 8 years in sales. Zebco was on had some fairly flat growth till a few years ago. We started resurrecting the brand, and last year things just went crazy with COVID.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear more about that resurrection story. And last but not least, a fellow Minnesotan like myself, Dave. Pass it over to you.
Hey, all. Yeah, I'm Dave Steiner. I'm the general manager at Real Avid. We're a small entrepreneurial company that 6 years ago had kind of one choice, and that was to rapidly expand and become something important or to go away. And we found a way through innovation to rapidly expand. But I would tell you that one of the secrets to our success was getting in the game early with SPS so that we could understand the successes we were having at retail and the challenges. So for the past 6 years, we've been relying on them to help us make a difference in our business with our partners.
Awesome. That rapid expansion sounds like a conversation I had with my wife about growing our family. It was either kids or time to go away. No, I'm kidding. So let's jump in. Sounds like each of you have had quite the year, to be honest. I mean, obviously COVID impacted you in fairly positive fashion with the way that the consumers changed a bit for you. But when you think about your audience and those inventory challenges that presented, how did you deal with that? You know, how have you used analytics or the dashboards that you're looking at the data from to keep on top of things? Let's start with Sean.
Thanks, Tyler. Yeah, the dashboards are very helpful in understanding your customer inventory all the way down to the store level. And with the market the way things have been, if you're in stock, you were selling this last year, and anything fishing related was selling.
Right.
So from week to week, your data can be very misleading if you're not looking at it and understanding your in stock position or your other product in stock positions. So being able to see on hand at store level in conjunction with your sales rates extremely important.
Dave.
Yeah, Sean's spot on. One of the things that you learn when business changes dramatically over a short period of time is you learn how much you might know about your business, and you may also learn that your best partners on the retail side are struggling to stay on top of the trends. So having visibility to your inventory by channel, by store, etc., allows you to help them perform better. But sometimes you get in a position where you are making a tough decision about who to send inventory to. And being able to see their inventory at that point in time also helps you find who's plump, who can get by for another week without it, and who's starving, and who needs that inventory to survive.
See how that level of visibility could be helpful for sure. And Luis.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us experienced something very different last year with COVID, between production delays and cancellations too, when it first happened. And really being on top of that inventory management. And like I had mentioned before, we trade in all distribution channels of distribution. It really helped us send the product to where it was needed. And as a result of it, we had phenomenal sell-throughs, and that's really what helped us with the massive growth that we're experiencing this year.
Excellent. Well, hey, Sean, I know during these times of high growth that you all really experienced it, but starting with you, Sean, you mentioned, hey, it wasn't if we were selling the product, it was just if we had it in stock. And managing production with sales trends that can really change on a dime can be kind of difficult. Can you share your experience with how you've dealt with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, things are changing almost weekly, and to be able to look at and at the times that you were in stock, what was your sales rate? Or the last year model that you guys are in development on would have been really handy through this time to look back at 21 versus 19. It was still easy enough to do in the analytics tool to pull both 19 data and 21 data and do it. It was a little bit more manual than having it in the same dashboard, but just being able to reprompt and run your dashboard to get the data out wasn't too big of a deal. But it's still, fishing's extremely seasonal, but the seasonality seems to line up, with the exception of 2020, seems to line up every year right on top of each other. So when you can look at that and start to make sense of the last 4 to 6 weeks of POS, when your customer's been in stock and when things have been returning to normal, gives you a lot of confidence in your future forecast.
Good point. Luis and Dave, anything you'd like to input, maybe how you collaborated with various teams, operations within your company to determine where the need is or where you need to shift the sales focus?
Yeah, so my background, I started on the buying side, so I was on the retail side initially. I tend to look at sales and stock ratios. Obviously that you want those two ratios to be equal. So if something's doing 20% of my sales and it's only 10% of my inventory, that's an opportunity. Conversely, you got to look at the liabilities as well. If something's 2% of the sales and 10% of the inventory, that's not good. So, but really just, especially in my particular case here at Gills, we launched new programs at the likes of Bass Pro Shops, Dick's Sporting Goods Academy and such. So the SPS information that I'm using is invaluable. It helps me monitor the business. And quite frankly, I can provide insights to the buyer before they even ask. So it helps them really drive their business.
Anything to add, Dave?
Yeah, Tyler, I might just add, the wonderful thing about, I guess, the three of us being in the outdoor industry is we got to see a real rise in overall demand. And we got to see consumers coming back into the marketplace that either hadn't been there in a while or may have had been, discovering a new passion. And so having access to very current selling information allowed us to see, wow, there's a new breed of this kind of person in the marketplace. And I need to let our engineers, designers, and production team know that, guess what? There's another subsegment here that's pretty excited to be in the game, and we need to kind of ramp up our production in those areas as well.
That's awesome. I haven't even thought of that, extending the conversation to that group. Very cool. It's a good problem to have, but with growth, it doesn't always happen consistently within an area that you plan for, in the same product or channel. You don't really know the mediums, the places, marketplace, e-commerce, brick and mortar stores. You can't plan for that type of growth all the time. And so how has analytics helped alert you to which items were moving quickly, potentially, where at, in what channel? I really would love to hear a little bit on that point, as well as, were you able to, once you had this information, what did you do with it? Like, it's great to have it, but how were you able to have some actionable insights once you were able to leverage that data? Luis and Dave, let's start with you guys on this question.
Dave, I'll let you start this time.
Got you on mute, Dave.
Sorry, thank
There
you.
we go. No
One of
problem.
the things that you recognize pretty quickly when the world changed with kind of the pandemic and social unrest is that the consumer shopping habits in terms of where they shop changed. When brick and mortar closed down, the world went online. And not only did that spike the business bigger than expected, but it also taught some people that, hey, I used to love brick and mortar, but this online game is kind of cool too. And so understanding the anomalies by being able to see the changes by channel was super important. Not only in terms of where we're channeling inventory, but kind of where to refocus maybe some of our partnerships. But it also presented huge challenges because fast forward 12 months later, everything's upside down again. The world can hardly wait to get out and go to brick and mortar, and online is soft. So we had to study the data pretty closely to find out what's real. It was 2019 the closest to real, because 2020 wasn't. But having that data at both sales and inventory, historical and current, is super important as we kind of project what to do next.
Hey, quick follow up on that end, Dave. Having that access to point of sale data, how granular are you getting? Are you getting down to a location level? Are you how granular do you tend to get, and how do you share that with the team?
Well, you know what? I'm sure Luis and Sean can concur. But when the world changes rapidly, our retail partners are really challenged to try and stay on top of things. So our role in data analytics became even more important, so that we could be the best business partner possible and actually help them uncover things that they weren't uncovering themselves, regions or stores or items. So you ask how granular? Every Monday I start big picture, right? Top line, plus or minus LY, gross margin. Get a little closer to what are sell-throughs, what are top sellers, worst sellers, and then you go a little deeper to try to find out, why is that? Is it because they're out of inventory? Because they have too much inventory? Because the item's new and nobody's watching it? So it's really, really important, especially for our smaller company, to understand unit sales by store, by partner.
That's awesome. And I can imagine that helps you build some trust. Luis, please.
Yeah, I'll concur with that. I mean, we go down to as granular level as we can in terms of using the analytics. I go back to my Under Armour days. I was actually the head of demand planning there for all of sporting goods, and at one point even North America regional merchandise planning. And you can plan, you can do a plan, and it feels like you're writing scripture. It's such a good plan, but it never goes that way. It just never does. And that weekly information that's coming in through SPS is invaluable, because you're going to discover, even if you're 60, 70 right, you're going to find these anomalies of regions that you weren't expecting that are performing or outperforming. I mean, no surprise here, but for our business, the Southeast is extremely strong. We're a Florida-based company, but then you would be surprised that someplace in Michigan is doing well with our product, or somewhere in the Northeast. So yeah, just getting that granular level of detail. And to echo Dave's point, one thing that has been consistent with our retail partners is they're becoming understaffed, and they just don't have the time to focus on the business the same way that we will. So, my buyer at Bass Pro has all of fishing and hunting apparel or fishing apparel, and I'm going to focus singularly on the gills business at Bass Pro. So we're really providing insights that can help, again, just help her drive her business. And the biggest thing for me is I want to be proactive, not reactive.
Right.
If I can just add to what, just add to what Dave and Luis have said, our retail partners they're heavily dependent on their systems, and their systems usually lag. They're kind of reactionary to what's been happening. So when you have a business as seasonal as fishing, where you might see 70% of your sales by through the week of 4th of July, and just over half a year, you're going to see well over half of your year's sales. So the systems right now, you might be getting back orders for things that you're getting back in stock on, and it could be crazy because of what the last few weeks of sales have been. But if you're able to drill down and look at the stores, how many stores are out of stock, and what it's going to take to fill them back up when you're actually back in stock a month or two from now, it's a vastly different number. So right now, being able to analyze store level inventory is going to be really critical to not put ourselves in the other ditch.
Absolutely. I could see how that level of inventory and insights can help move your conversations forward with your buyers, and as I think Luis alluded to it, be proactive versus reactive. That's awesome stuff. All right, gentlemen, thank you for all the insights. One last question for each of you. I think when you're considering analytics, especially for maybe some people on this call, that wherever they're at on that data journey for their organization, if they're maybe considering analytics to help them better understand their sales and manage their inventory, what would you pass on to them? What information would you kind of provide them or help them with the knowledge that you have if they're starting that today? Sean, let's start with you again.
I would just say don't get discouraged if everybody doesn't jump on board right away. It's everybody learns at their own pace. Some people are more visual; they have to see a graph. Some people want to see the numbers. There's a couple of people that have shown this to that are using it now. And the first 2 or 3 times I talked to them, they just their eyes would glass over halfway through the conversation, and there's only that they could take, and then all of a sudden the lights come on and they're seeing the value of it, and
right.
And I want another one. I want a dashboard that looks like this, and can you do this? Can you do this? And it's once the lights come on, it can be addictive going around looking in the data, the stuff you can find out, but don't get discouraged, and make sure your organization is committed to it and your executives are sponsoring it, and you're going to stick it through for the long haul.
Love that. It's great. Luis.
Yeah, I think that obviously we're all interested in longevity and really getting that trust factor between you and your accounts. So when you're able to provide that level of service, and I'll tell you, if you can provide the analytics and give them insights and things like that, you have a leg up on, I'd say, 3/4 of your competition, because they're not doing it. But when you can do that, you're going to build long-standing growth type of relationships where they trust you. And, I have customers now that are like, this is how much money I have, just spend it. I mean, that's the ideal scenario, obviously.
Right.
But, you build that trust, and, obviously it's through years and years of working together. But at the end of the day, their success is what drives our success. So, it's that partnership and building that trust that's ultra important. And this is a huge tool that they can use to get there.
Great. Dave, last but not least.
Oh boy. Well, I'll tell you what, if I was in the fishing industry, now having spent a little time with Sean and Luis, I'd be scared to death to not have this tool because I know what I'm doing.
Right.
And seriously, Luis is right now, it's a strategic advantage, but that's not how it's going to be forever. And if you're flying blind and you know your competition is providing all these great analytics to their partners and to their own, own corporation, you're going to be actually kind of hopping around with one leg if you don't have that kind of tool.
True words have never been spoken. Well, thank you, gentlemen. We'll have you back on shortly for the Q&A. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to my esteemed colleague, Jody, who's going to bring on Brad and Allison into the conversation. Jody.
Perfect. Thanks, Tyler. Great conversation, guys. So as Tyler mentioned, next I'd like to welcome Brad from Therabody. Well, Brad is new to Therabody. He spent several years at Callaway, helping Callaway turn analytics into a strategic advantage with their retailers. And joining Brad, we have Allison from our retail intelligence team here. So Brad and Allison, could we start out with a couple of quick intros? Brad, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Jody. Hello, everyone. It's nice to meet you all. I'm Brad Handley. I'm currently the Director of Category Management at Therabody. Therabody has a few product families that fall into that wellness or tech wellness category, with our probably most well-known item being the Theragun, which is a percussive massage gun. I've been lucky enough to work with Allison for a few years now, both in my prior role where I spent about 8 years at Callaway Golf and now here at Therabody. So Allison obviously has a ton of great retail analytics experience. She's an expert when it comes to the SPS environment. So I usually go to Allison when we have an idea of something we want to do in either a report or a dashboard, but really kind of stretches the limits of our abilities to do on our own. It's often something that we've manually built in Excel, but would like to automate in a dashboard. So she's been kind of the brains behind the operations for some of our best dashboards, which helps me look good. And she's found ways to build some pretty awesome tools that help us manage our business.
Thanks, Brad. That's my whole goal, to make you look good.
You're doing great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Allison Chibis, and I work on a team at SPS called Retail Intelligence. So what that means is just that we have, everyone on my team has a lot of experience working in the industry, usually as a planner or a sales operations, definitely more technical, more analytical. And now we're all experts in the tool. So we help customers build out intelligent reports and dashboards to address specific business issues or data analytics kind of needs that you have. So I've had the pleasure of working with Brad for many years over at Callaway, and now, we can work together on Therabody. So it's very exciting.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. And kudos to Brad for calling Allison the brains of the operation. I love that. So Brad, I know that you've been working with our analytics both to track new product introductions, along with just making sure that you get ahead of any of those trends, and then watching your inventory positions to make sure that they align with the actual sales. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So that's always one of those unknowns when you go into a new product launch, right? How is the product going to perform overall at retail, but also how's it going to perform down at the SKU level? And so we very carefully track an item's performance in the first few weeks so that we can get an early read on how it's doing in comparison to our own expectations. So is the mix of product that we're selling through in line with our expectations? Is it in line with what the retailer is carrying in their on-hand mix? And if it's not, then we quickly work to correct to what we're seeing. So that could be working with the retailer to change their presentation levels in one SKU versus another. Sometimes it's signaling to our supply team that we need to produce less of one SKU and more of another so that we can maximize what is selling well and minimize the risk of that slow moving product, either as kind of inventories just sitting in the field or as supply sitting in our warehouse. But being able to identify those issues or opportunities in the first couple of weeks really helps our retailers increase turns, and it helps us get additional replenishment, right? Kind of in some ways all work in sales. It also helps us as we move towards the end of a product's life cycle to avoid having to mark down product that has had trouble selling. So this helps both us and the retailer. We get to maintain higher margins, and turns and margins are always two important KPIs for a buyer to manage. So I found that if I can help increase both of those, the buyers are usually pretty happy.
Got it. I know that you and Allison worked together, I think, to create a dashboard specific to this business case. Allison, could you maybe bring that up and walk us through it?
Yeah, of course. So I'm going to show you all a dashboard that's using demo data. So this isn't real data, but it's really just to demonstrate how you can use a dashboard within the tool to keep track of those first couple weeks of a product launch. So the first thing I'm going to call out here is the example here is we're going to be looking at a new launch of a shoe called Southern Cushioning Shoe. And the first thing you'll want to look at here is the week over week sales. So the first week being the week of the launch. And you can see here the sales curve slowly increases, which is generally what you see when you're launching a new product. You know, it starts off slow as the inventory and the hits stores and the presentations are out there and all that. So you'll generally notice the uptick in sales for the first couple weeks. So that is nice to kind of keep track of with the week over week line graphs. So the one thing I do want to point out is to Brad's point, like when you're launching a new product, you generally have various iterations of that product, whether it's colors or sizes or different different types of the same model. So in this example, we're looking at 5 different colors of the shoe, and you can see here it's sorted on rank. So the number 1 color is the middle yellow color. And that is also represented by this blue line at the top here, which you can see this blue line and this yellow line are far outranking all of the other colors. It's important, when you're planning or you're getting ready for a new product launch, you usually have one number that you forecasted you're going to sell at your retailers for the overall model. And then you kind of allocate it based on a percent mix to the different variations of that model. So in this example, that would be color. So maybe, you planned that 50% of your sales were going to come in through this most popular color, and then the rest of it would be distributed amongst the others. So the thing that you want to track when you're launching a product is, what is that percent mix actually coming out to be? And if it's not what I expected, I need to take action on that. So the first 2 columns here you're seeing are the percent sales mix. The first one is based on just the past 4 weeks. And then the second one is based on the past 13 weeks. And that's so you can, continue to use this tracker over time, and you can really understand if the current trend of the 4-week is matching the longer term trend of the 13-week. So you can see here the number 1 color is tracking under the 50% plan that in my example, so we're coming in at more like 43%. And then the next 2 columns here are the inventory percent mix. So we've got the on-hand inventory percent mix, and then the on order. So what's in the pipeline, what's coming into this specific retailer. So you can see here that the inventory is actually under what it should be. It's coming in, less than the 43%. And then further from that is all of the supporting actual sales for the past 4 weeks, just to kind of verify these numbers for you. But the one thing I just want to point out is earlier in the call, we were talking about how it's important to manage or to track sales in the different channels or the different places that the inventory is coming in. So we've added here a location type so that you can very easily filter down to see the internet sales or just the brick and mortar sales, the store sales. So as an example, if I filter on store, you'll notice the weekly trend chart update at the bottom. So now you can see there's a slightly different demand coming in through the internet than there is coming in from brick and mortar. And so this dashboard allows you to very easily look at total business and then drill down to either internet or brick and mortar. So, I built this out, and then, so I just asked Brad, is this something similar to what you were using to track your new launches, and what kind of key insights and actions did you get from it?
Yeah, so this was something that we would have built in Excel, and we did. And every week we'd have to come in and download new data and refresh it and send it out. And to have this automated is so much better. But this is such an easy conversation for us to have with the buying team, right? I would pull this up in a meeting with them and walk them through this and say, hey guys, look at this middle yellow SKU as an example. I think we need to bring more of this in. You've got open to buy dollars that you're allocating. You have open orders. Let's push more of that into these top 2 SKUs that are doing really well, and probably pull some out of maybe that bottom one, that Timberwolf one as an example. We're starting to see already that weeks of supply in the far right-hand corner is tracking lower in the best 2 SKUs. And the way that they're buying in this example, that weeks of supply is going to continue to drop in those 2, and it's going to continue to grow in that bottom one. So let's rebalance that so we can get product that's going to turn faster and not invest more dollars into that bottom performing SKU. I would question their repurchasing system right away if they're reordering 11% of that product and it's only 5% of their sales.
Right. And you're getting ahead of markdowns too, because then they would have to mark down on that, and then you got to pay, you got to subsidize that. So there you go. You're saving yourself money too.
That's right.
Cool. Thanks, Brad. And yeah, so if anyone has any questions on this, feel free to put a question in the Q&A, and we can answer it at the end of the call.
Perfect. So thanks for going through that, guys. Like Allison said, we can have questions about it too from people in the audience. But I appreciated seeing some of the insights you can get during new product launches, and especially as it relates to the inventory positions. Before we go to Q&A though, Brad, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. Any last minute thoughts or actionable advice that you would offer to people getting started with analytics or just in general?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for a lot of people, maybe not everybody on this call, but maybe the audience that would receive some of the work that we do, just looking at data is kind of boring. Looking at spreadsheets and tables maybe isn't helpful for a lot of people. So I like to be able to take all of that data and tell a story with it, ideally with some sort of visual aid. So take the chart Allison just showed us a minute ago. It's really easy to understand that, right? You see that linear line and you grasp what's going on. It's simple. And as the person that owns the data, you get to decide what story to tell with those visuals. So you get to help guide the business based on what you're seeing in the data. And I found that no matter how complex that sort of behind the scenes work is to get those insights, the deliverable back to leadership, if I can keep that as simple as possible and easy to understand, even if I have to put it in a PowerPoint with some slides, that avoids people getting lost or overwhelmed in those Excel workbooks. And it's been a pretty valuable asset for me.
Perfect. I love it. So thanks to both Brad and Allison for going through that dashboard with us. I'm going to turn it back over to Danny to go through some Q&A.
Yes. So again, if you have any questions, I see a couple came through in the chat. Feel free to put it in the Q&A portion. So like on the bottom banner of your screen, we'll have a place for you to put specific questions in. So we'll get all of our panelists back onto the screen here. And it looks like we have a few questions coming in. And it looks like the first one is by Alka. She's asking, is the dashboard available for use by all participants? Allison, you want to take that one for me?
Yeah, definitely. So I built that dashboard as a power user of our system. So anyone who has access to the system with a little bit of training can build that. It's a pretty simple dashboard to build. It really didn't take very long. And we also have a support team that can help you as you go through the process of building it. So it isn't something that's out of the box, but it's something that's very easy to build.
Awesome. Looks like we have another one from Raj that I think, Allison, you could handle this one as well. He says, can the program forecast week average sales as well? Say, what would the sales be in the next 4 weeks based on the previous trend?
Yeah, that's a very, very popular question. Forecasting is very complicated, and our system is a business intelligence tool that allows you to kind of analyze historical trends and kind of get a feeling for what the future can hold, but it doesn't actually do forecasting. And I have been able to build reports that do a little bit of what I call crude forecasting, kind of the formulas I would input into an Excel file. You can replicate in a report. It works just like Excel, where you can add formulas in, but there's no forecasting baked into it.
So you don't have a crystal ball? is what I'm hearing you
No,
say.
no crystal ball. I wish I
Oh,
did. I could be making millions.
right. If only. That's awesome.
Anyone on the panel before we jump on, how have you used used data to maybe influence your forecast? You don't have that out of the box calculator, but curious to hear anyone's input on how it's helped influence.
So I'll take that. We're using it today to look at, like I mentioned earlier, fishing's very seasonal. So year over year, the percentage you sell by week stays fairly consistent from one year to the next. So if you look at the last 4 to 6 weeks of data, and you've been in stock and things have kind of calmed down, you can take the percentage of that and extrapolate what it would be to a full year and compare that to what's inside your forecast system.
Yeah, I might add on to that and say that it's particularly important when you're introducing new items. And you might have originally projected a little bit like this. And as soon as you have real data, you can use that as a comparison to maybe other existing items in your mix. And through some simple 7th grade algebra, say, guess what? I'm selling 500 of these a week, and I sell 1,000 of another. I know I've got a new projection that's approximately half of something that is in my existing mix. It's just been super important when you're in the early part of an introduction or even early part of a life cycle.
Yeah, that's a great call out. I would say look for like items that have similar features or similar uses, and you'll generally find that the trends follow the like items.
Tyler, I'd add that as you start to dial in your forecast on what's selling through, you're really able to start to dial in your forecast of how much you need to sell in for the balance of the year, right? And then as you know what you're going to sell in, you start to get an understanding of what your revenue is going to be by month as you move through the year. And the trickle, like the downstream impact of knowing all those things ahead of time, right, it impacts a lot of other stuff that maybe people don't think about, but the finance team becomes dependent on to do like headcount analysis. So there's so much stuff just outside of what's selling through that the company benefits from by knowing all of that way earlier in the product life cycle.
Fantastic. Awesome. We have another question. They're wondering, how do you tell your retailer that they should order a different quantity than they want to? Luis, how do you go about that conversation?
That's always a tough one. Having done a lot of forecasting over the last decade or so, it's amazing how you can derive 2 different forecasts and they both look equally right. We used to joke, at Under Armour in terms of the forecast, it's always wrong. The question is how close or how off are you? But the bottom line is, I think in that particular scenario, the best thing to do is partner with your account or your retail partner, work through the numbers together. And, because at the end of the day, you have to find alignment. And even if the scenario is such that, the retail analytics can really help you make sure that you don't make massive mistakes if they're wanting to buy a lot, and kind of what Allison was saying in that like material or like product, if they think they want to do, 100,000 units and you're showing that like product only sold 20,000 units, then again, sharing that data and that insight as you're working with them, maybe the right number is 40 or 50, but you have to work with them and align, make sure there's alignment. That's the best way to handle it, because like I said, it's a partnership.
Anybody else Sean, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I'll say one of the things that's really critical is make sure that you have the right audience. The buyer might not be the right person to actually know the inventory levels. If they have an inventory analyst or somebody that handles that for a living, they'll know the numbers better, and they can, they will be seeing the same things you are most likely, and that'll lead to some credibility with the buyer. And then on the other side of that, I think you pick some things that they need to slow down on, identify some slower moving things. That also helps build some credibility before you go into the things they need to order more of.
That is critical. You can't just address the opportunities. You have to also address the liabilities. You got to have that balance.
Makes sense. We have another question from Raj. He says there's a recent shock to a lot of supply chains out there. Weird. I don't know why that would be. Seems odd. What challenges were you or are you seeing, and how are you planning for them, and how are you handling them in this current landscape? Dave, do you want to take this one?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. You almost have to wear a big hat and a medium hat. So the big hat says, I want to keep as many customers happy as I possibly can. And I want to do what's right for each of their businesses. But more than anything, I want to make sure that every consumer needs are being fulfilled. So I will tell you, our perspective has been trying to keep every peg full. And that might mean that some of our partners that like to keep DC stock a little bit lighter on the DC side in order to keep another peg full with somebody that typically turns faster. And it's a really tough line to walk, right? Because somebody's going to be disappointed. But as long as you sort of keep the overall in-stock thing in mind, it seems to play out nicely. A less comfortable thing to do, and may not be a topic for this, could take us down a rabbit hole, but to understand your brand positioning and to understand which one of your partners helps build your brand versus the partners that maybe don't build it. And prioritize those channels or those partners first.
Danny, I'd add in, with the issues that a lot of people are facing with supply chains, having the data to know which of your retailers are in dire need of that product, maybe more so than others, regardless of how big those POs that are coming in are. That's vital when it comes to kind of that allocation exercise, right? If I've only got 100 units to ship out, who do I give it to and why? It's making that informed decision versus just making the likes of DSG happy because they've got a big order in. I think that's better for your business. I don't know how people are doing it without that information.
I'll add, obviously for my company, we do a lot of overseas production with a lot, kind of addressing specifically a lot of the issues that we're seeing coming out of Asia and everything else. What's been invaluable for us is that initial forecasting process. We're getting our orders in a timely manner, or even sometimes earlier than some of our competitors. And it's really allowed us to ensure that our even despite the delays and everything else, we have a steady stream of production that's coming in. And then in other spaces, we've literally dual source product into this hemisphere where necessary. So that's how we're addressing a lot of the shocks that are happening in supply chain by better upfront planning, and that's how we're continuing to succeed.
Luis, you brought up kind of a cool point that made me think of something else too. That when you can integrate your retail partners' inventory and sales patterns into your own production planning, and actually understand your own weeks of supply, you can move upstream and decide which product's going to get on the next container, right? If I've got 1 week of supply in my warehouse of this and 10 weeks of another, and I had a different thing planned for the container, man, we are moving way upstream to completely change, not the production necessarily, but the prioritization on bringing the goods in.
Awesome. We have another question here that says, what was the biggest change that you saw going from custom Excel spreadsheets to point of sale dashboards?
Yeah, I can start with that one. Really frees up your Monday. I'll tell you that. You're not spending all day downloading reports and refreshing Excel and pushing those out to people. Some of our retailers, the data comes in on Sunday, and so the leadership team is getting a dashboard on Sunday night, so they know before they walk in on Monday how a lot of our bigger retailers did over the weekend. So that's great, and you get to spend more time doing the stuff that that you wanted to dig into the business of the why and pull out the insights versus just spending time updating Excel documents.
I'll just tag along with what Brad said. The speed of being able to get new information is incredible. If you did an analysis in a spreadsheet and sent it out to the organization, it's a good chance somebody's going to come back and point to one of the numbers and say, what drove that increase, or why is that off? And then you have to go back and there's another analysis. When you're in a dashboard, you can just click on things till you get the answers you want. It's all right there.
So Brad, you're saying you don't like waiting for Excel spreadsheets to load. Is that that's what we're getting from this?
Oh my gosh, the amount of time I wasted in my life watching that Excel circle, just like calculate. Ugh.
It sounds therapeutic, right? You could do some breathing, you could do some breathing exercises, maybe meditate a
when
little
I take
bit.
my walk. Yeah,
Exactly. Very good.
I will say, unfortunately, I've broken Excel several times trying to do some of those big data dumps and everything else. But yeah, the dashboards are invaluable, especially for leadership and senior management, just as an opportunity for them to be able to go in and really get that 30,000-foot view of the business. I mean, to Sean's point, it always leads somewhere else in terms of, well, what's driving that? And it leads to further analysis, but just getting that first view, it's amazing. It really helps a lot.
Yeah, I found that some of the kind of repeatable and simple reports that the sales team finds really valuable, not necessarily sales leadership, like the big dashboards, but for the account rep to get every Monday a list of all the stores that are out of stock of product or almost out of stock or going to be out of stock, so they can pick up the phone or send an email to the stores and say, hey, can you write a PO for this before you get out of stock and get ahead of that, versus waiting, or not knowing that they're going to be out of stock of that product. The sales team is very appreciative of that.
Awesome. We have another question from Cami. She's asking, how do you approach slow moving stock to faster selling channels? Sean, do you want to take this first?
No, I'll let somebody else answer that. I mean, our only options are to take it back or give a credit memo. Really, it's not like we're going to take it from one customer and ship it to another. You can ask them to do store transfers in some cases, but you really don't have a lot of options. We prefer to try to figure those things out before the buyer asks for something and bring a solution to him, rather than look at slow moving inventory and try to figure out what to do with it.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with Sean there. It's tough. You look for, again, it's back to that being proactive versus reactive. Hopefully you identify those slow movers early on. You stop shipping them any additional future shipments of that same product. It is really hard in this environment to execute store transfers, or let alone within an organization if something's doing better than that. So a lot of times the result is a credit memo, but if you can minimize the damage by identifying those slow movers early, and kind of back to Cammie's question, it's amazing how different channels of distribution for the same product, somebody does better with it than somebody else. So you try and funnel it over to who is actually being successful with it. But yeah, just getting that identification beforehand. Anytime you can come to the buyer before they notify you with the issue, it just, again, helps build that trust.
Great. Well, I have one question. This is from me myself, not even anybody in the audience, but I'm curious how your relationship with your buyers have changed once you've started to bring these data-driven insights into those meetings.
Well, I'd love to take that, but I know Sean and Luis will have some great stories too. First of all, every buyer is different. And so there are some buyers that are immediately receptive to you wanting to share insights. And then there are other buyers that are incredibly protective. They're worried you're going to pester them every Monday with, hey, you're out of stock of this in this store. So really understanding what they're looking for from a partner in many instances has set us off on the right foot. And we know we've got a lot of value to provide. So sometimes we're really, soft pedal to begin with. Hey, I want to let you know, we look at your business every Monday. We're going to have some insights. How often would you like to hear from us? You want to hear from us monthly? You want to hear from us only when there's a fire? But we really, really are eager to be the best partner we can. And we think we can be that way if you allow us to have some dialogue. And then it can take a lot of different shapes and forms after that. Maybe Sean or Luis can tell you how amazing it gets once you've built up some rapport.
I totally agree with Dave. It really does vary by buyer. Some buyers, like I mentioned earlier, like, here's how my money, spend it however you want. Other buyers don't want any of that whatsoever. They want to make sure that they're in control of it. I have retail partners, and these are people I've been doing business with for well over a decade, that some readily share their information, and another one, like a Shields, because of the seasonality of the business, does not want to share their information. So you really have, it's a case by case scenario. But kind of just echoing what David said, it's allowing them to know that you have the capability of doing those things. And then again, just providing information at their discretion, and just helping to hopefully uncover things that, again, you've got more time to look at your specific business with them than they do. So trying to provide just being as helpful as possible. I always say, I'll take as little or as much of the work out of it for them. That's when I start a relationship, that's basically how I start.
Yeah, it's really all about trust. They really, Dave and Luis, that their answers are spot on. It's about trust and building that credibility over time.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, I think we'll wrap up here a little early, unless we just all want to stand here and we could just stare at each other for the next 8 minutes. I think that could be fun if we wanted to. But the great news is we are curious to know what it was like from your perspective. So if you would be willing, we'll have a link in the chat to a survey, or that QR code right here. You could go ahead and scan that, fill out the survey. Let us know what you learned, what you got from it, how funny the host was. Like any feedback would be fantastic. We'd love to hear. And if you do, we'll get your next Starbucks. We'll give you a little $5 gift card, so your next coffee is on SPS. Again, thank you so much for joining. If you have any further questions, we would love to get those answered for you. Feel free to reach out to Megan Becker, and her email address is on the screen here. Again, I want to thank all of our panelists for coming out and talking with us. It would be much more fun to do this in person, but I think this is a great avenue and a great conversation that we just had. So thanks again, everyone, for showing up, and we hope you got something out of this.